Hey, what's up, Spartan Nation, and welcome to another episode of the Spartan Nation Podcast, here with your host, Matt Lonsberry, and my co-host, Aiden Mulcrone. Aiden, it's been a tumultuous weekend and week, to say the least. We usually have a Sunday podcast, but we decided to forego that this weekend, as obviously the news about Mel Tucker was breaking at the time, and we just didn't feel like it was appropriate for us to come on without more of the details coming out, and without us, spending some time looking at the details of that and being well informed. We just didn't. It was too quick of a turnaround, and we didn't want to come on here and say something that wasn't appropriate. So we are going to talk about the Mel Tucker suspension tonight. But just so you guys are aware, most of what our discussion is going to be about is just the football side of things, the ramifications that this has on not only this 2023 team, but also kind of the program going forward. We're not going to talk about the details. I mean, it's been out long enough that most of you probably know and understand the details of it. So we're going to approach it from a football perspective. And so with that, Aiden, Michigan State's preparing for easily their toughest opponent of the season so far. And right as that week is getting started, I found it kind of ironic that in Mel Tucker's press conference post to Richmond, he said, we're foregoing the 24-hour rule and Washington's on the clock. And then hours later, the news breaks. And so just a whirlwind of a night, that one night. I mean, I was up until 4 or 5 in the morning reading stuff and things like that,
right.
trying to get the whole grasp on it. So I guess looking at this team, Harlan Barnett gets promoted to acting head coach from his role as secondaries coach. He's got a lot of experience as a position coach, 21 years of experience. He's been a defensive coordinator and co-defensive coordinator at times during his career. So I guess the question that I have is, how do you think this bombshell of a news story and things like that will impact this team, and how are you feeling about the message that we've heard coming out of East Lansing going into a big game this weekend, just based on like where the team's at?
Yeah, I mean, I think. Well, I was actually just sitting in one of the halls at MSU, just kind of studying one day, and there were a couple football players who were sitting near me and like talking, and I overheard one of them say, they talked about leadership throughout the week, and like they've talked about I remember him saying, Coach Tucker and the rest of the coaches have really preached player-led teams, and he said, this is what we need now more than ever is, a player-led team. So I think that's really important. Now, obviously, it's not that, clear cut. Obviously,
Sure.
there is, more emotional kind of factors than just that. So while they may feel like they are player-led, there is still kind of that emotional tie to a coach that a lot of those guys came to play for. So
Sure.
that definitely hurts, but we'll see. I think Harlan Barnett obviously was part of both the Mark Dantonio and the Mel Tucker staff, so I think that's a good kind of interim to have to bridge the two. I know
Yep.
Chris Kapilovich is he's the associate head coach. But I think having Coach Hawkins Coach Barnett as their coach is really, really important. So yeah, I think that definitely plays a big factor. And then obviously, the whole thing we're not going to get into, but Coach Dantonio or Mark Dantonio coming back is also a big deal for a lot of these guys. Obviously, you look at some of the starters, like obviously Noah Kim, guys like Dallas Fincher who have been playing while Nick Samak has been injured, Simeon Barrow, Trey Mosley, all those guys came to MSU because of Mark Dantonio. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, no, I think the messaging coming out of the program has been really good and really positive. I did go to I went to the press conference with Alan Haller and Teresa Woodruff when Tucker was suspended, and I went to the press conference that Harlan Barnett's press conference, and I thought he did a really good job in that press conference. There was definitely some nervous energy early on, which I totally can understand, from his perspective, not knowing what kind of questions he was going to get, but like he really started to relax and put on a good face for the program. And I just hearing that the players, had a meeting before Alan Haller came and talked to him, before the coaches even had a chance to address the situation. It sounds like that was very positive, to your point about being player led. And it does sound like the players are rallying together and around the coaches who are still in the building right now. And again, all of that is just talk right now. We don't know what that's going to equate on the field, but as far as just a perception standpoint, I think the team is handling it about as well as you could expect. And we'll see what that looks like on Saturday. That first time on the field again together since all this happened. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. There's a part of me who believes that this can galvanize the team a little bit. And, you already have to be all in together to go into a game like this and pull off an upset. And nothing's more galvanizing than something like this that, can bring the guys together. And we'll see if that's what plays out on Saturday. But as far as, with the transfer portal and the way the rules work nowadays, it would be easy for guys to kind of just immediately check out and say, you know what, I'm going to take a red shirt and I'm going to get out of here. Harlan Barnett was asked about that on Tuesday, and he said no one has approached him. Now, he probably wouldn't say they had if somebody had, but he was pretty emphatic in the way that he answered the question. So that's interesting. We'll see how that plays out going forward as well. But I guess my question to you, Aiden, is how can this affect this team? Not only for this game, because this is a tough opponent. We're not going to judge the togetherness of the team based on the outcome of this game. But
right.
What's your gut feeling as far as how this team will stay together, react going forward for the rest of the year in light of this news?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good sign that they're, saying they're still focused, and, none of the guys have, announced that they're in the transfer portal or want to be in the transfer portal yet. But I think, obviously after Washington, you have kind of a tough stretch where you host Maryland, then you go to Iowa, and you kind of ramp up Big Ten play. And I think, this week is important, but I think, the Maryland and the Iowa games are just as important, if not more important, because when it's, when it's strike while the iron's hot, when it's, fresh in your mind to rally around the team, I think that's big. But, if they go on a 2 or 3 game losing skid, it's going to be huge to see what happens and kind of who's going to step up as a leader, what coach is going to step up kind of as a leader, because obviously we're not going to get into details, but the hearing for, the Mel Tucker thing is October 6th, I believe, or October 5th, or both days. So I think, so I think just leading up to that, I think, it could be very, mission focused, like Cam McGregor says in the comments. But at the same time, what's going to happen after that, and kind of we'll see, once the hearing, comes out and we get even more details, I think that could impact kind of where the team is at. And I think, a lot of the players who were here last, or, were with the team last season, they see the growth, and, we see the growth on how much that defense has improved. We see how well the offense played, after the first quarter in the first two games. And, there's a lot to like there. And, we'll see who wants, who doesn't want it to go to waste, and we'll see who will kind of, check out.
Yeah, I just wanted to address Ryan's question real quick. We're not going to get into too many like coaching candidates at this point. Like, Tucker, as much as we all expect him to eventually be fired, he hasn't been yet. I will say that I do think Jonathan Smith is a very good coach. He's also an Oregon State alum, so it would be tough maybe to pull him away from that. But then again, Oregon State's kind of floating out there on the West Coast by itself now with the realignment for the Pac-12. So we're not going to do too many coaching candidates right now. We will talk about that at some point, I expect. And I've even got a few names that I've gone through my head. Though me and or Aiden will probably write an article.
I probably got 3 articles worth of coaches.
Yeah. So we will definitely get to that at some point, I would imagine. But I did want to answer your question about Jonathan Smith. I do think he's a very good coach, but we're going to kind of stick with the Michigan State, what's going on right now for tonight anyway. So my thought here is, as far as like, game day operations, obviously I'm not privy to the coaches on the headset. Like, I don't know like the conversations that are had there, but I did think that, we've talked about Mike Valeni a few times on our show here. But I did think he made a fairly decent point in his like immediate reaction to this, is that, Mel Tucker is not the defensive coordinator. Mel Tucker is not the offensive coordinator. We're not sure how involved Mel Tucker was in with play calling on either side of the ball. Probably if he was involved, it'd be more on the defensive side. So I am a little bit curious to know like how much this impacts Michigan State on game day. I mean, obviously Mel Tucker is the one making the fourth down decisions, the kick a field goal here or let's go for it, punt based on field position. So obviously Harlan Barnett is going to make those decisions going forward. And I would imagine that Mark Dantonio is going to have a somewhat significant input on that as well, being a guy who was a head coach for a long time and has that experience. So I don't know how much Mel Tucker's suspension impacts the game day operation. Do you have any thoughts on that, Aiden?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a whole, like you said, it's an operation. So, everyone's involved. I mean, the whole recruiting team is still there and doing all of their stuff. It's kind of, the defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator, and then you have all the position coaches that kind of, go and run the drills and stuff before the game and do walkthrough. I think it's gonna affect kind of how they start in turn. Again, I think it goes back to just emotional stuff. I think the emotions, I think that's really what's going to affect it. But in terms of game day operation, I don't think a lot is going to change. I'll be interested to see on how much of an impact Dantonio really has, or kind of how much of a say is he going to have, or is he just kind of going to help let Barnett do his thing and then kind of help him and give him tips and pointers, or is he actually going to kind of control some of the game day situations and whatnot? So I think that'll be interesting to see. But I think the operation stuff isn't going to change that much. I think we'll find out after the game. I think that's going to be one of the big questions that's gonna be asked win or lose post game.
I think that's a good point too, as far as Dantonio's role, because part of this is you get 40 seconds between plays, and so if there's a decision that needs to be made, you don't have a whole lot of time for Dantonio to like share his opinion, and I think we should do this, and those conversations can happen quickly, but that is that's a factor. You don't want to be burning timeouts every time there's a decision to be made. So that's a good point. Kyle Cruz, good question about health. I will get to that. We'll get to that when we break down the game a little bit more. Shifting gears a little bit, Aiden, to kind of the future of the program. Assuming Mel Tucker is eventually dismissed, which I think the vast majority of us believe will happen at this point. Assuming that's the road that our Michigan State's program is headed down. How does that impact the future of this program? Because as we've talked about, Mel Tucker's specialty was recruiting. Michigan State, not as high of a recruiting class this year, but they do have some 4-stars in this class. They did land back-to-back top 25 classes each of the 2 previous cycles. And you've got to imagine that at season's end, when the transfer portal opens again, this is the world we live in now. So there will probably be some players on the team who look for opportunities. So I guess give me kind of a short term, like the next 2 years after this year look, and then maybe even a long-term look. Like what are your thoughts on that based on, an unfortunate situation right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge. I think, excuse me, but I think who they hire will definitely factor into that. But yeah, that really changes everything. I think, there's some position coaches. I really think Courtney Hawkins, the wide receivers coach, is somebody worth keeping and paying some more money to. I think he's shown that in the 4 years that he's been at MSU. Obviously he's an alum as well. I think, there are some defensive guys worth noting to retain. I think, Chris Kapilovich, obviously he's done some work with that line. So I think within the program, obviously you have the positional coaches that recruit players as well and, help build that up. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of investment. Obviously, Matt Ishbia and the new Tom Izzo building got built. And obviously Ishbia, after buying the Suns, can't, directly pay an NIL and everything like that. So
sure,
that changes the landscape a little bit, but it's kind of the next coach really has to rally the donors. They just got a brand new locker room. So I think they're well equipped for whoever the next guy may be. But then it also goes back to, relationships with the current players, assuming, obviously MSU tapped into the transfer portal a lot. So that said, there's probably going to be, like you mentioned, there's going to be a lot of turnover. And so the next coach, it's going to be how many players can they retain? How many, transfers, are they quality transfers that they can bring in? And then the relationship with recruiting, obviously you mentioned that, 2 top 25 classes, another class that's, pretty good with some big time talent, really. Like
sure.
you talk about Nick Marsh, he's really good. Obviously, Jason Brown has a crystal ball to Michigan State right now that could flip.
Right.
And that's really in play there with, Washington, a team who they're about to play. So,
and I think he's going to be on campus this weekend to check out the game too. So,
yeah.
I know. I mean, on one hand, that's not a bad thing to have him in the building and be able to explain, hey, this is what's in place. And I think better to have him in person and have a one-on-one, face-to-face conversation than to do this over the phone and try to, keep that momentum in place. But yeah, it's hard to know if Michigan State will be able to maintain that pole position with him because he's not committed. The guys who are committed, it's going to be hard enough to keep those guys in the fold. but yeah, that's something again that we'll get into at a later date as things develop. There's no sense in speculating on it right now. Let's answer a few questions here briefly. Kyle, yes, the portal does open for 30 days after a coach is fired or leaves. That allows the players to enter the portal if they so wish. Now, guys who have transferred once, they have to sit out a year if they choose to transfer again, and you can submit a waiver. But as we saw with the kid from North Carolina, is it Tez Walker? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, his situation. He transferred the second time before the rule was even changed. I'm not sure exactly. I haven't spent a whole lot of time in that story, but his waiver got denied, and so that is a factor as well. But yes, the portal does open if there's a change in coaching. Drew asked if we'd seen practice this week. No, we haven't. The practice was not open. Actually, it hasn't been open since they started playing games. There was a couple fall camp practices that were open to the media, but since the season has started, there's been no practice availability at all. And I can imagine certainly not this week with everything that's been going on. So no, we haven't been at practice. And just a little bit of a shout out here to Jonathan Kim, who's off to a 2 for 2 in field goal kicking, I believe, so far this year. And I know there's segments of our audience who would like to know what's going on with the special teams and the kicking duties. And so far, Jonathan Kim has been a big upgrade at kicker based on what the situation was last year. So shout out to him. All right. With that, I think we'll move on to one final thought, I guess, on the future, and then we'll move on to like our normal scheduled programming here, if you will. So I guess my last thought is, it did seem like this program and Tucker's vision was kind of set to kind of crescendo in 2024, perhaps 2025, based on the schedule. The Big Ten does expand, and so there's definitely going to be some added competition to the league. There's no doubt. So it's hard to say that this doesn't do anything but undercut that a little bit. Like, again, the program did seem to be, we assumed based on like what we'd see this year that it would trend back up, and that would be kind of that circled year as far as, hey, this is when we can start contending again. It's hard to imagine based on just the amount of uncertainty right now that will be the case over the next couple of years. We don't have any idea who the head coach will be next year, and going forward. We don't have an idea of how much of this roster will be in place next year and going forward. So it's definitely murky at best at this point. It's unfortunate because, again, when you make a coaching change, typically it does take a few years and you're building something, and then to have that build be kind of undercut, it's just really unfortunate timing. And it's not the fault of the players. It's not the fault of the rest of the coaching staff. That's been my biggest thing really through all of this is I feel awful for the players because you're asked to put so much time, energy, effort, blood, sweat, and tears is kind of a cliche, but like literally, like that's what you pour into a program, and to have it undercut, definitely an unfortunate situation. So, do you have any final thoughts, Aiden, or should we get back to the people and the players that are on the team and moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing that fans can do is just give players the support because they're still the ones that are on the field every Saturday that people are cheering for. Not many people are cheering for the coaches for calling plays and signaling, but they're cheering for the players who are on the field. So I think that's the best thing, as a fan that you could do. Obviously,
right.
That the news will take care of itself. Once we get like more facts to come out, I think then we can make evaluations on what the coaching staff will end up looking like in probably even 6 months, let alone a year. So yeah, I think that's the best thing. And obviously just for the players and the coaches on the team, I think the best thing for them is should just finish out the season, because it's not the NFL. I know it's kind of almost like a semi-pro. College is almost semi-pro now, but it's still not the NFL, and there's no draft and there's no rebuilding. You gotta take it year by year and win every game you can. So I think that's just what they really need to do right now.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of incentive both for the coaching staff and the players on the team right now.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even
if you're transferring, you still want to get film.
You want to put good stuff on your resume going forward. So that's why I'm really curious to see how this impacts this year's team. Just because after Central Michigan and Richmond, we don't know how good this team is. There's certainly been some things that I've been encouraged by what I've seen, the defense and the way Noah Kim has performed. So again, just very curious to see what it looks like going forward. Keys to Wisdom, appreciate the support on our articles and things like that. And yeah, please, those of you who are watching, if you read our stuff, share it on Facebook, spread it around as much as you can. That helps us, and that helps us to bring you guys more free content. So appreciate that. All right. That's enough of that. We are going to turn our attention back to this football team and this weekend. And so with that, we will open up burning questions, just 3 from each of us tonight, because as you can see, we're already 26 minutes in and we haven't even talked about the thing that we really want to talk about, which was this upcoming game. So I'll get us started here, Aiden, with my first burning question for you. And it has to do with Noah Kim. So my question is, will Noah Kim break a single season school record for passing yards, touchdowns, or completions this year? And the reason why I ask is Kim is on pace for a little over 3,400 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, and 300 completions. And those first 2 numbers, the yards and touchdowns, he's on pace. He's on pace to break both of those records. And completions, he's only, I think, 2 or 3 off pace. So again, kind of a crazy question to ask after just 2 weeks and against overmatched opponents, but he's performed well so far. So are we going to see a school record from Noah Kim this year?
I'm gonna say no. I think he can come close. I mean, obviously, we've seen a lot of big plays and kind of taking advantage of broken coverages the last 2 games, and just there's a lot of ball being thrown down the field a lot, and they have decent protection. As much as the O-line has had their struggles, they have had good pass protection in the last 3 years. So I think that's something that is good. But at the same time, I think once you start playing the Washingtons, the Iowas, the Michigans of the world, then I think those numbers start to decrease a little. But that does kind of lead into my question. My first burning question, though, it was just, can Kim continue this success and kind of the level of consistency, because he doesn't have an interception yet. He had, I think, 17 consecutive completions, and just kind of does he have what it takes to continue to be successful?
Yeah, so I think if one of these records were to fall, I think the most likely would probably be the touchdown record, just because Peyton Thorne said it a couple years ago at 27. And so if one was to fall, that was to be the one that I had to kind of put my chips in on. And for the Spartan faithful out there, the single season passing yard is held by Jeff Smoker. And he also holds the single season completion record. That's 33.95 on the yardage and 302 on the completion. So yeah, definitely gonna be tough to reach those numbers. Just for the reason that you pointed out, is the fact that, the schedule is getting tougher now from here and through the rest of the season. But I'm encouraged by what we saw. Certainly last week, again, overmatched opponent, but Noah Kim gets named Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week. Very efficient. I think he completed 17 consecutive passes to finish his night, which was impressive. So it's funny, like after one of our shows after Central Michigan, I asked a question about, has Kim done enough to solidify the position? At the time, I wasn't sure. Like, I wanted to see a little bit of Caden Hauser before I could, and see how Kim responded to his first start. After seeing him again last week, yeah, he's the guy. He's QB1, and I don't think there's any question about that at this point. So, all right, so you hit me with one of yours, so I will come back. Similar question, but a little bit different. How many rushing yards and touchdowns for Nathan Carter this season? He's on pace for a little over 1,300 yards and 24 touchdowns, which is a lot. That would set the MSU single season record. So we don't expect that, but a good start for Nathan Carter. So ballpark figures, Aiden, what do you expect his season to wind up as far as yardage and touchdowns?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has some pretty good playmaking ability. I think that the offense, the running game, it's kind of been difficult for these running backs to find the lanes, but I think Carter has broken some away and made some big plays and gained a lot of yards from that. So I think just the way that he's playing, it's a little bit inconsistent when you look at when you watch in game, where it's like they kind of have struggled on drives where it's like he only gets like a 2 or 3 yard gain. And then, the next drive or 2 drives after, he breaks one for 35, 40 yards. And you're like, okay, then they go back. So, but I think the numbers in terms of like the totals in game will start to be consistent. So I think for that reason, I would say ballpark, I would predict probably between 1,000 to maybe 1,200 yards or maybe 1,300 yards, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And then as for touchdowns, I think that really depends on kind of Jaron Mangum and Jalen Berger and kind of when they come back. So I think that affects it. But I would still give him maybe probably like between 11 to like 15 touchdowns, even somewhere around there. So I think yeah, like 1,000 to 1,300 yards and about 10 to 14 or 11 to 15 kind of touchdowns would be my ballpark.
Yeah, I think that's similar to where I'm at. Is if to like narrow it down a little bit more just for myself, I think I would go around. I'm bouncing between like 1,100 to 1,200 yards rushing for the year, and which he's not. I mean, he's his pace is ahead of that right now, but that's not like a super drop off or anything like that. I think he can maintain it based on like you said, what's Berger's situation, what does Mangum come in, what's his role when he gets back healthy. As far as touchdowns, that is a tough thing to predict because it just strategy shifts game to game. But I'm around 12. I'm around 12. I think would be a pretty good, certainly be a good year for him, better than anybody had last year. So that's where I'm at. Okay. Second burning question for you, Aiden. Hit me with it.
All right. This also is for the offense. Can MSU score a touchdown in the first quarter against Washington?
Okay. Well,
or will they?
Will they? That's a better question. Let's go with will they?
Will they?
A touchdown. These first quarters are flying by this year, and I think a big chunk of that has to do with the new clock rules. But yeah, I'm going to go yes. Why not? I mean, we need a little optimism based on everything that's happened this week. I do think Spartan Stadium is going to be lit on fire on Saturday, rallying behind this team. So yeah, I think there will be a little bit of juice in the building. I think that juice will trickle down to the players. And so, yeah, I think Michigan State does score a touchdown in the first quarter, and we're kind of off to the races. That's going to play a little bit into my predictions and things like that when we get into it. But yeah, I think Michigan State gets off to a good start. Any thoughts, or do you want me to move on to the next?
No, I was gonna say, I would. Honestly, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna be. I'll be that guy. But I think I do think it's going to be a competitive game. But at the same time, I think just the struggles to it's been slow. I think that's really kind of been their struggle. Even I think even if they do get the ball to start, I think it's just gonna be hard because it kind of just looks like they're just feeling them out. Like it looks like the first round of a boxing fight where it's like they're not really throwing punches. They're just kind of feeling what they have and what they don't. And then, second quarter, they kind of start turning it on and the wheels start turning a little bit.
Well, against Richmond, they did come out and throw a flea flicker, I think, on the first play. So
that's a little bit
of a haymaker, but unfortunately they whiffed. So
yeah.
But we'll see what that looks like this week for sure. All right, I'm going to move on to my next one. We're going to shift to defense for me for this last burning question. Michigan State is averaging 5 sacks per game right now. Now, that's not going to continue all year long. That would be 60 on the year, which would be a crazy amount in 12 games. So my question is, how many sacks will the team finish with this season? We've seen an improved pass rush so far. Michigan State had 29 sacks as a team last year. So with those kind of figures in mind, on pace for 60, had 29 last year. Throw me a number. How many sacks for the defense in total this season?
Yeah, I mean, I would say anywhere between 35 to 40 would probably be it's a good step in the right direction. Right. I think that shows, their pass rush is, it's forceful. I think, also at the same time, like, they've created a lot of pressure, that you watch the Central Michigan and the Richmond game where they have created a ton of pressure and they weren't able to get to the quarterback, but it did affect the play. So I think, they are going to affect the passing game. Even if they don't make like 45, 50 sacks, they'll still affect it in a positive way for the defense.
Yeah, I think if you're pushing 40 sacks on the year, that's a pretty good year for your pass rush, because for every sack, there's usually 3, 4, 5 more pressures, because, it's tough to sack the quarterback. So that's part of, like, we talked about during the offseason and during fall camp leading up to the year, that the defensive line we felt was the strength of this team. And I think through 2 weeks, that's been pretty evident based on what we've seen so far. And I still think that's the strength of the defense, is that defensive line, which has mostly stayed healthy so far too, which is also good to see. All right, you should have one more burning question.
All right, this is another offensive question, but which wide receiver do you expect to lead the team in receiving yards this week? I know we saw Trey Mosley was the leading receiver last week against Richmond, and then Jerron Glover was the leading receiver in week 1. So who steps up this week?
Jerron Glover was week 1. Who was last week?
Mosley.
Okay, Mosley. This actually has to do with one of my over-unders, but I will answer the question. I'll go with Mosley this week. The veteran, he had 6 catches in this game last year, or I think 5 catches in this game last year. So I'll go with Mosley. The Mr. Reliable is his nickname for a reason. I think there's a large comfort level between him and Noah Kim. I appreciate the way that Michigan State has spread the ball around during these first 2 weeks. I think obviously wide receiver was a bit of a concern after Keon Coleman transferred. And I still don't think, this isn't saying a whole lot. I still don't think they have that guy, like that kind of a guy in the room, but there's very few of those guys in the country. But I think there's enough talent, there's enough depth in the room as a whole that they're going to be okay at wide receiver going forward. I'll go with Mosley for this one. Just his veteran presence. He's not going to be nervous. He's played in big games before, so I'll go with him.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Jerron Glover. I think if you looking back at last year, Keon Coleman made some big plays, and I think Glover is kind of similar in a way where he's a lot taller. I think he's about 6'3", 215. So he's a large body to cover, and I thought fundamentally he did really well. The last 2 games, just high pointing the ball. He looks like a threat deep, and Noah Kim's played well enough that he can find him. So I think I'm going to go Glover again.
Okay. All right. That was a quick, shortened version of burning questions. But again, we usually do that on Sunday, but didn't have a show this Sunday for obvious reasons. So Let's address some of the injury stuff at this point before we move on to Big Ten at a glance. We're not going to spend a ton of time here, just because most of what we hear about injuries is speculation. I'll just be upfront with that because the team is not very forthcoming with information, understandably so. They weren't under Tucker. Harlan Barnett was asked a question about health, and he said he's taking the Belichick approach, which is maybe even more tied down than Tucker was. So, but Kyle did ask about Jaden Mangum, Jacoby Windman, and Jalen Berger. Again, this is speculation at this point. But I did kind of hear on some message board stuff that Mangum was going through warmups last week and kind of tweaked whatever it was that held him out of week 1. So I think he'll still be on that questionable list. You know, the Big Ten has its teams now release an injury report a couple hours before games. He'll probably be on that questionable section again, and we'll see if he goes. Little bit less optimistic at this point about Jacoby and Jalen Berger. Now, again, that's not to say I have any inside information, because I don't. But I would be a little surprised based on what I've heard so far if those guys are available Saturday, but I could be off on that. I could be wrong on it. Kyle also asked about Barberin getting an opportunity with Simmons and Prim, both fumbling last week. Barberin's another guy who might be a little bit banged up. Not sure. He's also a true freshman. Not sure if the coaches want to go to him in this type of game. Perhaps because the depth there could be limited. So we'll see. I would imagine that we're going to see Simmons and Prim again this week. But again, that's kind of gut feeling on that. And finally, Cameron McGregor asked about Darius Snow. I know Snow went through warmups with the team, fully dressed last week. I don't remember if he was on the out or questionable. I think he was on out, but he was still dressed and he went through warmups. So it sounds like he's progressing if that was the situation last week. Again, not sure if this is the game to kind of put him back into the rotation. But if Jacoby is out, then maybe that does open the door. So just a few thoughts there on injuries, but again, that's, take it with a grain of salt because not entirely sure about any of those guys, but that's kind of what I've the rumblings that I've heard. All right, with that, let's move on to Big Ten at a glance. This is where we look at the best Big Ten game of the week and the worst Big Ten game of the week, in my opinion, and then a few notables on there. So we'll start with the best. There's a few different directions we could have gone here. It's not a great big week of college football. There's no such thing as a bad week of college football, but not a huge I don't even know who College Game Day is going to this week.
It's going to Colorado. It's Colorado.
Is it really?
State. Yeah.
Wow. So big noon kickoff, it has 2 weeks of Colorado, and then ESPN's like, well, we need to jump on that train. Yeah. So that's interesting. I didn't know that. So all right. So biggest or best game for the Big Ten, in my opinion, is Minnesota at number 20 North Carolina. A few different directions I could have gone here, but this is a 8-point point spread. North Carolina is favored by 8. Minnesota, we saw in week 1 against Nebraska, did not look very good. Probably should have lost the game, but Nebraska did what Nebraska does and blew it in the final minutes. So they're 2-0. They beat, I don't remember who they beat last week.
Eastern Michigan.
There you go. Eastern Michigan, they beat last week. So going to be a tough game for the Gophers, I think, to go on the road here against a high-powered offense. Minnesota does not play that style. So what are your thoughts on this game, Aiden, going into what my opinion, the best game of the week for the Big Ten?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make an argument for MSU Washington.
I think you can too.
See.
Yes.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think, like you said, North Carolina has a high-powered offense that's going to be hard to keep up with. I think physicality-wise, I think Minnesota can, come close to matching them. But I do think just Drake May, the playmaker that he is, I think that's too much, especially for a Big Ten West team who doesn't have face a lot of playmakers like him. So
Right.
yeah, I think I agree with that. I think North Carolina. I mean, I think if if Minnesota really kind of sticks to a game plan of just playing physical and kind of keeping everything in front of them in terms of, North Carolina's passing game. I think if they keep everything in front of them and all of that, I think they can make it a close game. But I don't really see any time that Minnesota could really run away with this game. But I do see that with North Carolina. I think if North Carolina really comes out and, gets physical with Minnesota, I think it could get out of hand.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you with that too. I'm certainly leaning North Carolina in this matchup. I don't think it's a very good matchup for Minnesota. If they can muddy up the game and do the whole ball control thing, that's their best bet for pulling up an upset down there. But yeah, I'm with you on that. Worst game of the week. And for this one, we go to our neighbors down in Ann Arbor. And it's Bowling Green at number 2 Michigan. Michigan's a 40.5-point favorite. Aiden, why is this a night game?
Because it's Michigan. I don't know. At least it's on Big Ten Network, or it could be a Peacock game, but Big Ten Network's fine. I mean, yeah. At least it's not stealing a ESPN or a Fox slot for a different team.
That's true, but I think this game should be on Peacock, and Michigan State Washington at the worst should be on Big Ten Network. But that's not how the network things work.
I know.
So we've shared our opinion on that, but yeah, just there's a few other games that could have been worse. I think Western Kentucky goes to Ohio State. Not a great matchup, but I think Western Kentucky might be better than Bowling Green. So yeah, just a lousy. We're finally getting to the end of Michigan's lousy non-conference schedule, and I think they play Rutgers the next week, so it's not like huge jump in difficulty. But Rutgers is better than East Carolina and Bowling Green, and who'd they play last week? UNLV. So yeah, the Wolverines might have to break a sweat in the weeks coming up, but probably not this Saturday. So that's the worst game of the week. Notables here. Number 7, Penn State at Illinois. I think this was more intriguing preseason, but Illinois looked bad against Kansas. I don't know if you had a chance to watch that game, but Kansas smacked them. And I don't know what the final score was, but it was not indicative of the game. I think it was like 10-12 point win for Kansas, and they were up, I think, 34-7 or something like that. They were just taking it to Illinois. So, yeah, Illinois was kind of my dark horse Big Ten West team. Not my pick, but my dark horse. And I have not been impressed with what I've seen from Illinois so far this year. So that was a notable one. Louisville at Indiana, 2 basketball schools, but I thought that somewhat intriguing there. Very different styles with Jeff Brom down at Louisville and Tom Allen being more of a defensive guy. So I thought that was notable. And then really had to scrape the bottom of the barrel here to get a couple more notable games. But we had Virginia Tech at Rutgers. Rutgers is favored by 7. Syracuse is going to Purdue, and Syracuse is favored by 2.5. So again, not a huge highlight inducing weekend for the Big Ten, but that's a quick glance at the conference this week. All right, with that, let's move on to over-unders. I'll let you start this time since I started our burning questions.
All right, over-unders. All right, I'm gonna get into it. I'll just say it. We'll go Washington over under 34.5 points.
Okay, 34.5. I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna go over on that. That offense, man, it's funny. Like when we talked about the Washington leading up the season, we said, they're kind of Ohio State light. They might have a better offense than Ohio State this year. I mean, based on what we've seen through a couple weeks. So, this offense is loaded. Michael Penix is, a Heisman contender, or we expect him to be. The wide receiver room is very deep and weapons all over the place. So, yeah, I'm gonna have to go over 34.5.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the number that MSU should be looking for, is kind of 34 for them to win this game. I think they
Yeah.
should. I think if the defense holds them to about 34 points, I think that they did their job, because that offense is really high powered. So I think 34 is the number that the defense should be looking at, and then kind of the offense can go off that, because that's really going to carry Washington kind of into October and November, and whether or not they're going to be playing or like have an opportunity to make the playoff, or if they're just going to be like a 8-4 or 9-3 team.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. My first over under, I looked back at last year's game. It's just some of the statistics from that game. I think Michigan State only ran for like 42 yards against Washington last season, which is not going to get the job done. It certainly didn't last year, and it won't this year either. So my question is, Michigan State is averaging, albeit against lower quality opponents, 144.5 yards per game so far this season. I don't expect that against Washington, that step up in competition, but I'm setting the total rushing yard number at 100.5 for Michigan State. Over under 100 yards rushing. I think you have to do this in order to have a chance in this game, but I'm going to ask the question because 42 yards last year, Aiden. So where are you at?
Well, that's funny you say that, because that was also one of my over unders, but
That's
instead
okay.
of 100, instead of 100.5, I set it at 125 total rushing yards. So I think
Okay.
I think I was a little more optimistic, not as much in the rushing game as much as in Nathan Carter, and kind of I think just the explosiveness that Nathan Carter brings, opposed to kind of, we can talk about kind of what you were saying about the 42 rushing yards. I think he brings an explosiveness that they didn't have last year. And I think, Noah Kim aspect, I think you can factor that as well, where, a lot of people talked about how fast and how much of an athlete he was. They haven't really shown it a ton, but will they show it this week? I think that can be another important factor worth noting.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one too. I do think they will go over 100 yards rushing as a team. I think 125 is a pretty good number. The season average being 144.5. I'm not sure that we're going to get, or Michigan State is going to get to that point. If they do, I think that's a very good ingredient as far as staying in this game and potentially pulling off an upset. So yeah, I'm going to go over 100 yards rushing as a team. And we'll see what that translates into the game if that in fact does happen. All right. Hit me with your second over under. Well, I guess technically third. That's okay. Actually, let me hit my second one since you've already kind of done two here. Noah Kim, you mentioned, he is a factor in this game and how he can open up some avenues in the running game that, Peyton Thorne was already kind of banged up by this point in the season. But I will say, Peyton Thorne threw for 323 yards against Washington last year. Now, I think Keon Coleman had was a big part of that. But it was a pretty good day for Peyton. Again, Michigan State got down early, and so they kind of had to throw the ball around a little bit more to try to keep pace and get back in the game. I'm not going to go 323 for Noah, but I'm going to set it pretty high. I'm going to set it at 275.5, which is right around his season average so far. So over under 275.5.
I'm gonna go under for that. I mean, okay. I think I'm gonna go a little bit under. I think they're gonna try to use a little bit more of the rushing game. I think, again with Carter, I think can Kim use his feet? I think they're really gonna look into that this week. But yeah, I'm gonna go under. I think obviously that's also a better kind of DB group than Central Michigan and Richmond. So
sure,
it's definitely going to be a battle. But I think just watching kind of Washington a little bit, they do like to blitz a lot. So I think he's going to be under pressure. I think there's gonna be some bad throws, but I think they're going to create a lot of pressure. But I think what can they do to create finding their playmakers and kind of creativity from Jay Johnson as well.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna lean towards the over, and part of this does have to do with the fact that with the way that Washington can score, there's certainly a possibility here that Michigan State finds itself down a couple scores and then having to throw the ball around to try to, again, get back in the game, stay in the game. So I'll go over. I don't think he's gonna have a huge game for some of the reasons that you mentioned. Plus, as I mentioned before too, I think we're going to see better balance than we saw in this game last year. So I'll go over. It is optimistic, I'll admit that, but I just think Michigan State's offense maybe can find some success in this game. So that's where I'm at on that. All right, your number 3 over under.
Well, I'll actually skip. I'll just go into my other over under because it does relate to that. I'll go on the other side of. I'll do Michael Penix Jr. passing yards because that's what I had down. I set it at 325. I think that's it seems like a high number, but they average 41 pass attempts per game right now. So I think just the pure, kind of just the volume that and the rate that they throw it at. I think I set it at 325, and again, I'm setting these numbers kind of at some rates where it's like this is where you want, if you're the defense, if you can get under 325, I consider that a win for the defense. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, I think that does seem like a high number for the over under, but I think it's a realistic number too. And Washington hasn't. I watched quite a bit of the Washington Boise State game. I didn't watch any of their game last week, but they've really leaned on that passing game. Like, they haven't run the ball much. I'm not sure if that's by design or by the fact that maybe they don't get as good a push in the run game. I think maybe a little bit of both. So no, I'll go over. I'll lean over on that. You've got to not let Michael Penix have a career game, which he has had a couple times against Michigan State, in order to stay in the game. But I'll go over 325. I think he's again, crazy talent in that receiver room. Michigan State secondary. The young guys look good, but they have not faced a test like this. So I'll go over. And again, if you're the defense, you've got to just don't let it be a career day for Michael Penix.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to go over, and I know I see some comments about, what if he does this? I think even if he does throw 2 interceptions, I think that he can still hit that over. I think that's very possible. So I think I'd take the over for that. And kind of what, like you mentioned, the running game, I think we'll see, because I do think MSU was a little flustered last year. And they, Washington kind of caught them off guard with their running game, and they were able to move the ball and kind of had some successful rushing attack. So I think that, the fact that we haven't seen that yet, I think that is a little bit of a concern. Just the fact that we don't really know or have that great of an idea of how good or bad it could be.
Yeah, I think the shoe is a little bit on the other foot this year because on one hand, Jaden Reed didn't play in last year's game over there in Seattle. He got hurt the previous week with sliding into the bench. So I don't even think he made the trip. And this popped up in my Facebook memories today, but I think Michigan State was ranked number 9 going into the game last year in Seattle, which based on everything that happened that season, and then what the expectations were for this season, it's hard to imagine that Michigan State was ranked in the top 10 at this time last year, but they were. And now you've got Washington coming in at number 8. Now I don't expect Washington to go 5-7. I'm going to put that out there, but there's something to be said about being the hunter versus the hunted, and I think Washington's just how good they were might have caught Michigan State off guard last year, and this Washington team certainly will not catch the Spartans off guard this year. So, all right, moving on to my next, and this has to do with a lot of the comments that we've been getting over the last couple of minutes. So, I think in order for Michigan State to pull off an upset, they've got to force turnovers with their defense. So I'm going to set the over-under on Michigan State turning Washington over 1.5 times. Is that 2 interception thing? Is that going to come to pass, Aiden, or maybe an interception and a fumble? But 1.5 is where I'm setting the over-under.
Right now, I would take the under. I'd still say one. I'm kind of confident that they will get 1 turnover, but 2 is kind of a tall ask, like you were saying. I mean, I know I was listening to Dylan Tatum after the Richmond game, and he was talking about, playing at Washington last year and kind of how that group, while they are young, like we've talked about, that group is familiar with Penix, and kind of, he talked about, him playing out there, like it was just the crowd and everything, and how big of a game that was. I know Angelo Gross played a lot in that game. I don't think Mangum played or Spencer played. But like Brantley and Gross and Tatum all played in that game, so I think that's huge. But yeah, I'm gonna go under 1 turnover, and especially if what we're hearing about Jacoby Windman also being doubtful for the game, I think that definitely plays a factor as well, because he really has just a sixth sense for the ball. So I think. Yeah,
sorry,
I think. Yeah, no, it's good. I was just gonna say that I think for that reason I take the under.
Yeah, I think Jacoby, even in only 8 games played, I think led the nation in forced fumbles last year, which was impressive. Obviously, I'm with you on this. I'm gonna, if I was putting money on it, which I don't gamble, so we do these over unders, but I'm not backing it up with any of my hard-earned cash. But if I were a gambling man, I think I would go under. I think 1. I certainly wouldn't be surprised by 1, just with the amount of times that Washington does throw the ball. I think there will be some opportunities, and as you noted in your keys to an upset, the story today, Michigan State's pass rush has improved. That forces maybe some quicker decision, maybe some some poor decisions, and maybe you come up with one. So if I was a betting man, I'd go under. But I do think Michigan State does need to be aggressive and get some takeaways in order to pull this one off. So, all right, you should have a couple more. So hit me with your.
Yeah, I have 2 more.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, my last 2 are both for defense. So I'll just say my first one, MSU over under 2.5 sacks. So we just talked about turnovers, and you kind of, one of your burning questions was about kind of where they are on track for sacks this season. So I'll set it at 2.5. I think that's pretty, again, like the amount they pass, I feel like that's attainable to get 3, and how well the pass rush has been playing. So yeah, 2.5.
I'll go over. The amount of times that Washington's going to throw the ball. Michael Penix is I saw durable in the comment section, but he is mobile. So he's a tough guy to sack, but he's not the same guy that he was at Indiana as far as that mobility and being used in the run game and things like that. So I'll go over. I think 3 is a pretty good number. I'll take the over on that one.
I also said the over on that as well. I think 3 or 4 is kind of the number I've been looking at, and just again, with Windman out, I think that plays, or if he is out, that definitely plays a role. But at the same time, I think Jalen Sammy has done well in the pass rush. Obviously, Chris Bogle, Zion Young, just kind of how well those guys play. I think I think if Windman was healthy, or like was for sure playing, I think I might set this number a little bit higher than 2.5. So
he's certainly, that's a big factor. Kari asked if is it, help me out, is it Carey or Kari? You can tell me in the comment section, because I don't want to keep saying it wrong, and I appreciate you being here. So let us know, is it Carey or Kari in the comment section. But I would say probably Aaron Brule is the guy here if Windman can't go. And I also think we'll see a fair amount of Jordan Hall this week too. Again, that plays a little bit into is Darius ready, and is the coaching staff comfortable playing him for the first time in over a year in this type of a game, in this game? So that's a factor. But I think Aaron Brule slots in to that starter spot if Windman's unavailable, and I think Jordan Hall is a bigger part of the rotation in that scenario as well. So, all right. Yeah, so I answered your question, right? Oh, yeah, sacks, right? So, sorry, I got a little sidetracked there, but my fourth one. This goes back to your question during Brain Questions with who will lead the team in receptions. Again, I looked back at last year's game, like the numbers and stuff, quite a bit. So, Trey Mosley had 5 catches for 64 yards in this game last year. So I'm setting two over-unders, 2 for 1 here. Trey Mosley over under 5.5 receptions and over under 64.5 yards. Nice timing on the mute there.
I know. So okay, sorry. Can you repeat those receptions and catches?
Yeah, so Trey Mosley over under 5.5 receptions and over under 6.5 or 64.5 receiving yards. Those were his numbers last year.
Okay, I'll go over on the yards, but under on the receptions. So I think he could get, 5 receptions, and then he could get over 65 yards,
64.5. So so right 65. On 65.
So yeah, so I think that's definitely, I think that's definitely attainable. I think they've done well with their playmaking. I think, with Jerron Glover being a vertical threat, Tyrell Henry, obviously, he's probably the fastest guy on the team. So I think just in that sense, I think, that opens up Trey Mosley for a lot of big plays. I could see him getting some, 20-yard gains and yeah, just moving the chain. So I think that's big. So just for that reason, yeah, I'll take under on receptions and then over on yards.
Okay, I kind of spoiled my answer a little bit when you asked the burning question, but I'll go over for both. And I like Keys to Wisdom's numbers here: 7 catches, 85 yards. I think that's a pretty good prediction. So yeah, I think we're in for a good day from Trey Mosley. Again, this kind of goes back to the whole strategy thing. How much can Michigan State control the ball with their run game? That's going to play a factor in how the game is won and or lost. So definitely I'll go over for both of these for Trey Mosley. All right, you should have one more, Aiden, and then I'll get to my last.
Yeah, so my last one is Malik Spencer over under 8.5 tackles. And kind of what I talked about in my article earlier today was kind of, what we saw from the Central Michigan game. We saw him at some linebacker position, and we've seen him, how good he's played at safety so far. And I think, we're going to see him move around a lot. And I think, that Washington team has a lot of good team speed. Rome Odunze, Jeremy Bernard, the other 2 receivers, obviously they have a lot of speed, and, their wide receivers are really good. So, will we see him kind of more? Could he step up more in that linebacker position? Do they like him out at safety? I like him as a player, and I think he and Cal Haladay, those 2 guys, whenever you see them on defense, those 2 guys are always around the ball too, looking to make a play along with Windman, but obviously he's, questionable. So yeah, so I'm going to set it at Malik Spencer over under 8.5 tackles.
It's a big number, but I think I loved that point you made in the article because we did see that earlier this year, and I think that's one of the ways where Scotty Hazelton has been different this year, and maybe the personnel that Michigan State has and the depth on the defensive side of the ball is what kind of unlocked that potential to be able to move guys around and play different positions. Yeah, I think I'll go over on it. It's a tough number to reach for a guy who's not like the primary linebacker. But I think he will be used in that role quite a bit. Michigan State got killed on, short crossing routes through a lot of last year. I mean, going back several years. But last year in particular, it seemed like, and with Windman's uncertainty, with Darius Snow's uncertainty, I wouldn't be surprised to see Malik come down and play next to either Cal Halliday or Aaron Brule or one of those guys. So I'll go over. I think he's going to be involved quite a bit on defense. So. Yeah, Kyle makes a good point too about, there's also in coverage he could have a few. So I'll go over on that.
Yeah, I'm also going to say over. I know I think he had 9 tackles against Central Michigan. And, assuming if he played the whole Richmond game, he probably would have had near probably 7 to 9 or 10 tackles as well. So I think just for that reason, he's probably going to play the whole game. I think I would expect him to play the whole game. So for that reason, yeah, I'll go 9. And then, yeah, no matter where he's positioned, I really think he's just gonna be, the ball is gonna find him. So
yeah,
for that reason, I'll go over.
Okay. All right. I got one more, and we're shifting back to Nathan Carter here. So Nathan Carter had 3 touchdowns in the game last week. He had a touchdown in the opener, so he's averaging 2 per game so far. This is pretty aggressive on my part. I highly doubt this is the number on any Vegas prop bets, but I'm setting Nathan Carter's touchdown total at 1.5. So 1.5 for Nathan Carter touchdowns.
You know what? I'll actually go over on that.
Okay.
I think I'll take the over. I think just with the running back situation, just for that reason, I'll take the over. I think, we saw Davion Prim and Jordan Simmons last week, and the second they fumbled the ball, they were both out, and they put after I think it was after Simmons fumbled, they put Carter back in the next drive, and then they put Prim in after. So I think he's earned the trust more so than the rest of the guys, especially if Berger and Jaron Mangum are both questionable. So I'll go over.
Okay. This pertains to my final score prediction a little bit, so I'm going to be kind of brief and not very insightful here, but I'm going to go under. I do think he finds the end zone. I think he's going to have a rushing touchdown this week, and I did leave the door open for a potential catch out of the backfield and a touchdown too. Like that will count if that does happen towards the over under. But I'll go under. I think he finds the end zone once. But it's going to be tough to find the end zone twice this week against Washington, I think. So, all right. And with that concludes our section on over under. There's a few people who gave some thoughts. Kari went over on 1.5 touchdowns for Nate Carter. Cameron is going under, but he thinks Noah Kim's going to find the end zone 4 times. So more of a passing attack is what Cameron McGregor. Yeah, so make sure I got the right. Was thinking for Saturday. All right, with that, we are well over an hour here, so we'll go through the rest of this pretty quickly, but we're just about wrapped up. So next section is place your bets, which is when we kind of look around the country as a whole and pick out just the best games of the week, and we pick which team will cover in the matchup. The one thing I forgot to do before the show tonight was look back at our picks last week, and so I don't have a running total as far as our records so far this year, Aiden. I did that the first week, but I forgot to do that. I don't think mine's very good. I'll just say that. There's a reason why I'm not a betting man. But hopefully next week I will remember to look back and check to see what our running records are for the year. But I don't have that tonight. But as far as the games this week, it is a smaller slate of games this week because there's not too many games that just jump out at you. So my first on the list is number 14, LSU is favored by 9.5. They're going to Mississippi State. So a road game for LSU. They got smacked pretty good in week 1 by Florida, but they're a 9.5 point favorite here on the road. So who do you got here, Aiden?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Florida State team is really, really good, and have an argument to be the best team in the country at the moment. But yeah, I think Mississippi State. I was kind of a fan of Arizona, and I've been kind of a fan of watching them lately. I think Jed Fish has done a really good job, turning that program around. But they went to Mississippi State and kind of got smacked.
Yeah.
So I thought Mississippi State has really been pretty good this year. So I'll still take LSU to win, but I think 9.5 is that's a difficult line, and that offense for Mississippi State is still kind of has some touches of Mike Leach to it in terms of just how high powered it is. So I'll take the points, but I do think Mississippi or I do I'll take the plus 9.5, but I do still think LSU wins.
I'm with you. I think LSU. I wouldn't be shocked if LSU goes and loses this game, and maybe you won't either. But I will pick LSU to win the game. But I'm going under as well. I think Mississippi State covers. And I think LSU is going to be in a dogfight here for this one. Wouldn't be surprised if this is like a field goal game for them. So I'll go Mississippi State covering. All right, next game, an old Big 12 matchup that is no more, but it's number 15 Kansas State going on the road at Missouri, and Kansas State is favored by 5 in this one, Aiden.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Kansas State and the points. I think that's more than a touchdown game. I think Missouri is okay, but they're definitely nowhere near top 25. And I just think Kansas State has a good thing going right now. I think they returned their quarterback. Obviously, they lost Deuce Vaughn, who's the All-American running back last season, but they're still really good. And I think I will hint at this. I think Chris Kleiman is a very compelling candidate for future job openings wherever it may be.
I wish I had a sounder that just was like breaking news or whoop 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 or something like that, because I like the sliding in the little hint there for maybe a potential future Michigan State coach. So I don't have a good feel for this game either way. But with Missouri, I do get those 5 points, and so I'm gonna take Missouri and the 5 points. But that's really the only reason why, is because I got a little bit of leeway by going Missouri. So I think I'm going to pick the Tigers to cover here. Kansas State, good, solid team. I agree with you about Chris Kleiman. I think he's a really good coach. Has done it at places where the talent pool is not very plentiful. So I do like Kansas State. Wouldn't be shocked if they go back to back in the Big 12 this year, though Texas looks pretty good. So I'll go Missouri and the 5 points, but don't have a very strong feeling about that. This next one we can do pretty quickly because we touched on it already. But I do think it's one of the better games this week. So it's Minnesota at number 20, North Carolina. You kind of already gave your thoughts on this one, Aiden, but official pick here. North Carolina is favored by 8. Are they going to cover, or do the Gophers keep it close?
Yeah, I'm gonna pick UNC to cover. I think just the fact that it's a home game for them as well. Yeah, just I think for that reason, and the fact that they have Drake May and Minnesota, lost Mo Ibrahim and Tanner Morgan. I think for that, I'll take UNC in the points.
Yeah, I'm gonna go North Carolina as well. Minnesota's the road team here. Tanner Morgan's not at the program anymore. Mo Ibrahim, as you mentioned, and man, they did not look very good against Nebraska, who, Nebraska's Nebraska. So yeah, I'm gonna go North Carolina as well. I just don't think Minnesota has the firepower to be able to go toe to toe with UNC. So I'm with you on that one. All right, last one, only 4 this week, which is okay because we're way over time. So I'm surprised by this number a little bit, but it is a rivalry game, and it's number 11 Tennessee going to Florida, and Tennessee is a 6.5 point favorite. So under a touchdown favorite for the number 11 team in the country, against Florida, who got beat pretty soundly by Utah in week 1. But, teams make adjustments. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. There's always one game every week where it's like that doesn't look like the right point spread, and it's kind of like, what does Vegas know that no one else does?
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm gonna take the bait. I'll take Tennessee and the points, 6.5. But it does feel a little too close for comfort. So, but I'll take it. I think Tennessee has a really high-powered offense. I know MSU fans know Joe Milton, but sorry. All right, I still think what I was saying. I think Joe Milton is a completely different player than he was at Michigan, and watching him against Virginia, they looked really good. So I'm going to take the points.
Yeah, no, this is a tough one because as you mentioned, you see that line and it kind of gives you pause and it makes you think, what is going on here? And so because of that, I think I'll go the other way and I'll pick Florida to cover. Normally I wouldn't even would have considered that because, man, Florida's just not. Billy Napier's only in his second year, and I think he's a good coach, but the folks down in Gainesville, they are not the most patient of fan bases down there. So I am interested in that. We might have lost Aiden, but I'll keep going here. So yeah, I'm gonna take the bait the other way, and I'll go Florida to cover at 6.5. And again, I do think Tennessee is in a good shape, or is a good program. I think Josh Heupel is a really good coach, but I'm going to go with Florida on this one. So, all right, Aiden's texting me right now because we lost his connection. His internet just went out, so I'm going to try to kill a little bit of time here and see if he can get that back. Keys to Wisdom likes Tennessee in this matchup. We still have to give our official score predictions for Michigan State and Washington. So what I'm going to do is, here comes Aiden. Aiden's back.
Oh my God.
Aiden's back.
Oh, right as we're so close to the end.
I know. We last week it was me. Fortunately, the broadcast goes through mine, so we didn't lose the whole broadcast like we did last week with mine. But Aiden's back, so just in time to give our final score predictions for Michigan State and Washington. Let's see who should go first here, Aiden.
You can if you want.
Okay, I'll go first. So Michigan State is a 16-point underdog. They opened as a 13-point underdog. And then, the Mel Tucker stuff kind of started to come out. I'm sure that impacted the line a little bit. So it does seem like a lot of the money is on Washington here. I don't know why I feel this way, but I just think Michigan State's going to come out and have some juice and really rally due to this situation. We talked about this game in the offseason and through fall camp, and I didn't have a good feeling about it just because the way that Washington attacks opposing defenses seems to go right at Michigan State's weakness, which is the secondary. I do like those guys that are back there, but there's something to be said about experience. But I don't know, I just feel like this team's going to be galvanized a little bit this week. And I've liked the chatter that we've heard out of East Lansing since the whole situation with Mel Tucker went down. And so I'm picking Michigan State to cover that 16 points. But I do have Washington State winning. I've got it at Washington 38 and Michigan State 27.
Okay. I also agree. I think MSU covers, and I think it is a close game throughout for those reasons. I think they do rally together. I think there will be a lot of fans that, obviously are a little, conflicted about what's going on with the situation. Sure. But I think
I think the fact that Mark Dantonio is coming back, I think a lot of people are, with the Rose Bowl team coming, that induction too. I think there's a little bit of just like kind of, buzz just around that. I think, amongst the fan base. So I do think Spartan Stadium will be loud. But yeah, I talked about that line or that number of Washington of over under 34.5. And I think that's really the number you want for MSU. So I do have MSU getting over 34.5. I do have MSU scoring 35. But I also have Washington scoring 38. So I do think Washington kind of sneaks out with a win, but it does show a little bit of optimism in this team, and that this team does show a little bit more fight than, people may give them credit for, or maybe that people are counting them out to not have.
Man, Aiden's got a nail biter going down in Spartan Stadium on Saturday. That'll be pins and needles for sure in the press box. And I tell you what, if that game is that tight and competitive down the stretch, I think Spartan Stadium will be on fire, like just on fire, just the emotion, all the emotion of this week. And I do expect that at the beginning of the game, but again, fourth quarter, the tension will be unreal if that's what plays out. So with that, I think we'll call it a night. We've rambled on here for almost an hour and a half. Thank you guys so much for sticking it out with us through a long show. Appreciate the back and forth, all the feedback that we got from you guys. Appreciate you guys sticking with us through that first section where we did feel like we needed to address the situations that's going on, but we want to get back to football just as much as everybody else. So again, appreciate you guys tuning in. And we'll see you next time, hopefully on Sunday, and talking about the outcome of this game. Until then, have a good night, and we'll see you later.